Thank you for joining us. When it comes to the history of Israel, we hear endless points of view along with so many distortions and omissions. Such manipulations of the facts are disseminated on university campuses and elsewhere in order to mislead the public worldwide and to promote an anti-Israel agenda. Subjecting students and others to lies by omission is not only deplorable and sinister, it is potentially dangerous as it incites hatred, hostility, and anti-Semitism. Who could possibly be better qualified to share the complete and genuine facts than a man from Israel, whose family has lived there in the Holy Land for many generations, a family that personally witnessed Israel's history and in fact is part of it. Our guest today is Ori Tal, who will share his views following these messages. With us now is Ori Tal. Ori, it's a real privilege to have you on the Shalom Show with us.
Pleasure being here.
I was thinking, as we do so often in the years going by, doing Hasbara, promoting Israel, so many people in the world have misconceptions about the history of Israel, and everybody wants to push their own agenda, and they say this and they say that, and most of the time what people say is not true. And on campuses, teenagers and students are being brainwashed by people who have an agenda to distort the true facts, and that is potentially dangerous. Why is Israel, in your opinion, as an Israeli of so many generations, why is Israel singled out for such criticism by world media?
Look, I would divide my answer to, I would say, 3 parts. First of all, you have the old anti-Semitism that goes with generation in some of the regions of the world, and nothing you're going to do going to change it. The other thing that we are seeing, there is a very good, what you said, Hasbara, from pro-Palestinian organization around the world that are being supported by a lot of money and countries with a lot of funds to support such Hasbara. And they are twisting the truth in many ways, and people that sit, for example, in the United States or in Europe that are not familiar with exact history or with the events and the course of events that are happening in Israel can get the wrong concept that the Israeli soldiers are bad and they are treating the Palestinians in an immoral way, and etc., etc. The third thing I would say, it's about educated people that are prejudiced as part of religion and as part of other agendas. Mainly it can be money or other agendas that you have that are trying to spread this misconcepts around the world among TV stations. You can see a lot of TV stations in the world that are very one-sided and that have their own agenda, which are using this to promote it.
These are all very essential points, but I'd like you to share with our audience how you see the reason for Israel being brought back into existence after thousands of years.
That's a very good point. First of all, the Jewish people never left Israel, even in the exile. And if you can look at the history, and you will see that the amount of Jewish people is a lot greater than people think during all the generations. They always stayed in Israel. Some of them were exiled, but some of them always stayed. And they actually always tried to get back to Israel. Many times they were prevented by all kinds of regimes and leaders, but it never stopped them from trying. You can see disinformation, that about that the land was Arab, and the Israelis came, the Jewish people, came on the 19th and 20th century suddenly, all of a sudden, and took the Arab lands. This is completely wrong. The amount of Jewish people that were there before were actually in large amount of time were exceeding the amount of Arabs, okay, even before what you call the Aliyah. The state of Israel was established to protect the Jewish people and to be the national home of the Jewish people. It doesn't say to be the national home for every citizen that is there. It says specifically for the Jewish people. Even in the Balfour Declaration and in the United States, in the United Nations decision, this was supposed to be the home for the Jewish people. After, of course, the Holocaust and everything that happened to the Jewish people, which was the Holocaust was of course, the most significant event that encouraged or became one of the things that pressed or pushed the establishment of the State of Israel. We witnessed unanimous understanding and concept among the world that the Jewish people needs to have their own nation due to what happened. So the State of Israel, when it was born and it was established, we don't have what you call the Constitution, but the State of Israel has Chukei Yesod, like basic rules that you're following, and they are all saying the same thing. They said that the State of Israel should be Jewish and democratic. Okay, there is a democracy, but first of all, Jewish.
Oh yeah, as you were saying, Israel was founded as the homeland for the Jewish people, in effect like an answer to the Holocaust. And endless years, endless centuries of oppression and persecution. Finally, a tiny little Jewish state for the Jewish people.
Yes. Finally, a tiny little state for the Jewish people. And this state is promoting first and foremost the Jewish people needs. It comes from a point of protection and establishing the state for a chaste minority that all these years suffers, oppressed and depressed by many, many nations. Therefore, you have rules and laws that are to the benefit of the Jewish people but do not give any benefit to other nations. For example, Chok HaShavut, which is like the returning right for all Jews can come to Israel and get citizenship and other benefits which other religion or nationalities cannot get. If the entire purpose of the Jewish nation is to be established, and the Zionist movement, the Jewish nation, the Jewish state, to establish a homeland for the Jewish people around the world, and that was a concept, it always will protect and give the benefits to Jews over other nationalities, because this is the only way we'll preserve a Jewish nation.
So why shouldn't the world be a little more honest about the true facts and the true purpose, while also we must consider the fact that the Muslim countries have more land than the United States of America, and frankly the Muslim neighbors could easily have settled their Arab brothers, the Palestinians, and integrated them into society rather than keep them as political pawns. So there are other sides of this story, other truths that the public is not being told.
Yes. First of all, in order to discuss this point, we need to bring a subject here for discussion. The reason for the conflict, in my view, is ideological rather than territorial. The Arabs do not really fight with the Jewish people over a small piece of land. Okay? Let's start with the Palestinian was actually an invention. Who are the Palestinians? The Palestinians are Arabs that came from many countries, can be from Turkey, from Egypt, from Jordan, from Syria. When the Ottoman Empire was in control, so they moved around all the empire, and at the time they were staying there. It's not that they were born from a generation as a nation. There are Arab nations, some of them, for example, the people from Gaza and the people from the West Bank are not the same people. The Palestinians from Gaza are usually Bedouin people that came from Egypt, when the Palestinians from the West Bank are from Lebanon or from Jordan or from other countries. They are not the same people, and they're not even marrying among themselves. They have complete separation, okay? Now, if the conflict is ideological, then it doesn't really matter, the land, another piece of land here, another piece of land. They just don't want the Jewish people there. It's a fact, okay? Once we acknowledge that, we understand that all these talks, we give him a little bit more land, they will make peace with us, we understand that this leads nowhere, okay? We saw what happened when the Israeli forces went out of Gaza and gave them the land. Did the terror stop? No, it increased. They start shooting more rockets, more missiles, and they just endanger a lot more city, and the radius now became much bigger, much greater, okay? So in my opinion, the real way, either you fight forever, which I don't think is a good thing, or maybe you need to give them autonomies to each section, because they're all different tribes. Maybe Ramallah should be an autonomy. Maybe Hebron needs to be an autonomy. Maybe the Gaza needs to be an autonomy. They're all separated. And the control and the defense and who monitor everything, the security should be in Israel's hands and not in their hands, because it leads nowhere. We all understand that we cannot rely on the Palestinian police or the Palestinian forces to defend the Israelis. Okay, it will not work.
Well, Israel couldn't depend on the United Nations either, and it brings me back to the 2006 war where terrorists were raining missiles onto northern Israel week after week, burning forests, killing people, and Israel just waited quietly until finally Israel retaliated. What would America do if terrorists were bombarding America from across the Mexican or Canadian border? They wouldn't tolerate it here for 5 minutes. So when Israel finally retaliated against terrorists in Lebanon, the world objected by saying Israel's response was disproportionate. They used the word disproportionate as a tool, as a device to make it appear as if Israel was the oppressor and the guilty party and the Arab terrorists were the victims. How ridiculous is that?
This is extremely ridiculous, and it's a double standard that the world shows often. The leading, I think, of this opinion at the time was Russia. She was the greatest opposition to the Israeli retaliation. But Russia forgot that when they have few minor terrorist activity there, they went and they made out of Chechnya a football field without even asking questions. All villages, no civilian care, civilians, no civilians. We saw what they did in Georgia, in Guzia. They don't really care. I would think that the United States, if you would have from Tijuana missiles to San Diego on a daily basis, I would say probably within a day all Mexico will be conquered, or something very radical will be done. Nobody will tolerate that. I think Israel shows a lot of restraint. Israel shows a lot of compassion to the civilians. I was specifically, when I was in Lebanon and we had the security zone, I can tell you many times we saw terrorists and we can shoot them, but because they were close, even to 300 feet from a house, we were not allowed. 300 feet from a United Nations stand, we are not allowed. We let them go, and you see them that they're about to do something that for sure is not to our benefit.
This entire subject matter is distressing, unfortunate, and perhaps the most tragic thing is the conflict could really have easily been resolved if there was mutual goodwill. We have to take a commercial break, but I'd like us to continue after these messages. We are back with Ori Tal. Ori, I began this program by introducing you and saying that you are a member of Jewish families that have lived in Israel for many generations. Please share with our audience a little bit about your family.
My grandfather from my mother's side is a very established family in Israel, and I'm actually a 10th generation in Israel. 10th generation from his side. He's a direct relation to the Chabad rabbi, Zalman Shlomo Meladi. And from my grandmother's side, from my mother's side, we are a direct connection to Baal Shem Tov. Family has like a book and all the regular stuff usually when you have such a heritage. I was born in Israel. My parents were born in Israel. Served, of course, in the Israeli army. Was an officer there in the Navy for a couple of years. And the entire service was around 5 years. And later on, like everybody else, university, law degree, economic, business. And sooner than later, I found myself here representing a group of people that was establishing here some businesses. And my faith was probably I met my wife here. And I already stayed, started my business here. And today, owner of holding companies for various real estate, commercial real estate companies and properties. My father was born in Israel, in Jerusalem, studied in an English school. Of course, Israel at that time was it was a British colony. My father joined the resistance against the British in order to establish a Jewish state. He was in a few organizations, and the most known is the Haganah. After the Haganah, my father was in a Givati unit for the Liberation War, and served all the wars of Israel, including volunteering to much later wars when he was already older. He was a lieutenant colonel, was very known at that time in the army. He was affiliated with great leaders of the IDF and the State of Israel. My father was married before he married my mother, and one of his sons was a lieutenant in the armed forces, in the Armed Corps, and was actually killed in the Yom Kippur War. He was very famous in this battle. In the entire Golan battle, everybody knew him. He received what you call Itor HaOz, which is one of the highest decoration for bravery in war. And we grew up on that. All my brother and sister, everyone was in the army. Everybody served, each one in a different way. We all grew up on that stories, and I wanted to contribute and donate to the state of Israel. And this is basically my background.
You know, it's been a while, and I remember Itor HaOz, but not quite sure what the Medal actually is. In America, people understand the Medal of Honor is the highest honor, and in Israel, the Tzalash is popularly known, but actually the Oz is higher.
Yes. Tzalash, it depends what Tzalash you have. You have Tzalash from the Chief of Staff, Tzalash from the Prime Minister, Tzalash from the Minister of Defense. There's a few Tzalashes. In a way, I would say that Tzalash is similar to Purple Heart, probably. Above Tzalash, there is Itor HaMofet. It's higher than Tzalash. Then you have Itor HaOz. That's what my brother received, which is usually when you are doing things that are sacrificing your life in order to save others in a way that was very profound for the battle. And then you have the Congressional Medal of Honor in America, and in Israel it's called Itor HaGvura. A Gvura only few people received, and a Gvura is actually not only you're sacrificing your life in order to save others, but you sacrifice your life and something that you have done changed the course of the war. You understand? Like there are a few that are known that got the Gvura. Kahalani, you probably heard of him, and Tzvika, Koach Tzvika in Yom Kippur, that did so many battles they won in the Golan and a sacrifice that changed the war. After that came Itor HaOz, and that's what if you can read about him, Seren Gil Tal in Hebrew, in Google you can find the entire story.
That is Captain Gil Tal.
Yes, he received the captain, he was a lieutenant at the time, he received the captain after.
Sad, tragic stories that were imposed upon Israel after the Holocaust. What a tragedy. And you say your father served in all of these wars, and so many, 1948. But just after the Holocaust, after World War II, Israel was subjected to 7 Arab armies simultaneously trying to wipe Israel out, and the world didn't step in to stop them until Israel, surprisingly, pushed them back. And then they do an armistice. Okay, the Jews have to stop. And also actually in the Yom Kippur War, when Israel was nearly in Damascus and in Cairo, only then did the world say, okay, Israel, stop. We don't want you to conquer all of Egypt and all of Syria. But when Israel's in danger, the world is surprisingly silent. What are your thoughts on that?
Unfortunately, that's the truth. It happened, it didn't happen recently, but it happened in Yom Kippur and on the Liberation War as well. There was such danger. And yes, you are right. In Yom Kippur, I think it was Kissinger that was making the ceasefire when Israel was very close to Damascus and already had the siege completely on the big army of Egypt and made the arrangement. Unfortunately, that's the way it is. I'm not sure why the world is doing that, and I don't really think the world cares so much about Israel. I know in the United States there is a strong lobby for Israel. In recent years, the United States is a great friend to Israel and supports Israel, and actually supports her both in defense and the economy and in many other ways. And I know that there is great cooperation and mutual ventures that the United States is doing with Israel.
Well, before we talk about positives and the astonishing achievements of the State of Israel, a barren land with few natural assets, yet the Olim, the immigrants who came to Israel in the last century with their hands planted trees, made the desert bloom, and of course today with technology, I would say Israel is in the forefront of technology in the world. But let's for a moment still dwell on some other facts. The city of David, Jerusalem, was built 5,000 years ago, 3,000 years before Islam. No head of state of any Arab country ever visited Jerusalem, while Jerusalem was under the control of Muslims. In fact, the name Jerusalem appears 700 times in the Bible that is holy to Christians and Jews. So there are all sorts of facts that the public is not really aware of that would maybe change their way of thinking if they were made aware of these realities.
I'm sure they're not aware of it. In Islam, the holy cities are Mecca and Medina, first of all. In Jerusalem is not even mentioned in the Quran, like you said. I think that it's a part of what I said before. The conflict is not territorial, it's ideological. And and it's not about Jerusalem. Jerusalem for me, for them, it's an excuse. Okay? There is an ideology here, and the ideology is be Muslim or you're an infidel and you shouldn't be here. That's it. And once we understand that this is the concept they have, and that the conflict is not territorial, we'll understand better their agendas and how we need to behave.
Let's talk about positives, the astonishing achievements of the State of Israel.
Look, it's no secret. Israel has still, again, there are a lot of things to improve. However, nobody objects to the fact that Israel is a pioneer in everything that has to do with high tech. I think the first cellular phone was invented in Motorola in Israel. And many other things. Actually, my brother is one of the guys that are establishing things like that. He has a few companies, and currently they're establishing more apps, and they were one of the biggest of establishing internet softwares. And this is many, I would say probably in percentage a lot more than any other country. You have young people that finish the Technion, or finish the Hebrew University, that are contributing very creative minds and are leading the world in technology, in creativity, in establishment of all the progress that you are witnessing today.
Back to the discussion on Israel's image, I would say the very best way for people to see the truth is to visit Israel, experience firsthand what Israel's all about.
I think that that's a great idea. I think that you will never find in any other country in the world such a variety like you will find in Israel. And when I say variety, I can say from the way of living between the Golan and the Negev and Tel Aviv, which is the leading city in the world in everything, in the climate, where you have deserts, when you have mountains with snow in the north, when you have humidity on the Haifa Tel Aviv area, and when you have all the nice kibbutz on the fertile land of Emek Israel, the Israel Valley, and when you have places like Eilat on the north. You have 3 seas in such a small country. You have the Red Sea, you have the Dead Sea, and you have the Mediterranean. Where can you find something like that within an hour, 2 hours away, the climate, the views, and even the people changing so much?
So you can ski?
You can ski in the north, in Hermon, and go to the desert in 3 hours away. One of the best area after the Great Barrier Reef in Australia is the Red Sea, to snorkel and see marine life, you know. So you have that. You have so many ancient and historical, archaeological findings, you know, and the city of Jerusalem is unique. Even the feeling that you have when you visit there, and the spiritualism. Archaeological sites in the Galilee, the Sea of Galilee, and all over Israel. You have historical Roman stuff in Masada, in Hordos, in Caesarea, and it's endless. So people should come and visit. I know a lot of Jewish people even didn't visit. I think it's a must. It's not even a recommendation. Every Jew should go to Israel and visit at least once.
See for themselves. And
yes.
The subject matters we are covering here are so important, and there's so much more I really would like to speak with you about, but we have to conclude our program today. And on this thought I'd like to share, if Israel's neighbors would recognize, all of them would recognize Israel's right to exist in a spirit of cooperation, the entire region would prosper, and the waste caused and the misery caused by conflict and war would be just a sad memory as we look to a better future. Let's do this again sometime in the future. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
This concludes our special program for today with Ori Tal. I'm Richard Peritz. Thank you for being with us.